Hello, everyone. My name is Phil, and I'm a doctor who likes to play and talk about board games. Oftentimes on this channel, I feature heavier games, meaning games that are typically longer and have more complex rule sets. However, I do like lighter, quicker games as well, and sometimes I feel like they don't get a chance to shine as often. I reviewed my top 100 games of all time a few months ago, and I noticed that I had more of the heavier games near the top of the list compared with the lighter ones. And there are various reasons for that. But ultimately, I've come to realize that the way that I think about and rate games differs completely from a heavier game compared to a lighter one. So that's why today I wanted to talk about my top 10 lighter games. The next thing to do before I start is to define what a light game would be to me. After toying around with a few definitions, I'm going to say that for me, to qualify for this list, the weight of the game, which is the rating given on Board Game Geek based off of players giving their answers to a poll on the complexity of the game, that average weight should be below 2.4. Specifically 2.4 because just above that you get games like Wingspan, which is at 2.48, Stone Age 2.46, and there are many other games like that. And I feel like they fit better with the medium weight category, the branch or the bridge between light and heavy. And so any game below 2.4, though, out of the majority of the ones that I've played, kind of fit that category that I was looking for. There's one exception to Dominion came in at a 2.34. I wouldn't consider it for this list because to me, Dominion is inclusive of all of the expansions, which definitely up the complexity. But in any case, those are some possible honorable mentions or things that didn't quite make the cut for this type of list that I'm doing today. My number 10 is Beer and Bread with a weight of 2.35. This is a two-player only card game about converting resources into beer and bread. What I really like about this game is that it's not only it doesn't only include resource conversion and contract fulfillment, really, nice mechanisms that really pair well with the theme, but it involves a deck of individualized cards that are multi-use in nature based off, what resources you can acquire with the card, the contract you can fulfill. The cards even have player powers that you can tuck underneath your tableau and give you some asymmetric abilities throughout the game. And they are drafted differently. Also, the cards themselves, there are essentially two different rounds to the game, or styles of rounds. And so there are two different ways that you can draft these cards. And so it really follows the theme of like having a really good year for Harvest and a bad year. And so it's just a really fun game that I think um, the design of the mechanisms really fit the theme and make it pretty cozy. It follows the Harvest theme really well. I admit that over a few plays, it does to me become somewhat repetitive in what you're trying to accomplish. But I think if I dug a little bit deeper, I would continue to find this game interesting with the different combinations of player powers, which ones might be worth drafting for, which ones aren't, and if continuing to play this on Board Game Arena, which is available to play for free. I think it would really serve to give it a try. If you haven't played this game, it's easy to try it. But I think it's well worth the time that you invest into it because I think there is quite a bit into this game strategically that you can get out of it for its relative weight. So that's Beer and Bread. My number 9 is Arboretum at a weight of 2.11. This is a notorious card game that involves drafting different types of trees to add to your tableau. What makes this game interesting is that you must offer a card to the discard pile in front of you whenever you place another card from your hand onto your tableau, which this discarding allows for other players to draft the card that you put there. There are other ways, or I should say, there is, the one major way that this game scores is kind of complicated to understand and explain at first, but it involves counting how many of one type of tree you have in a row in front of you versus and the highest type of that card in your hand. If you have the highest card amongst all the other players, then you have the right to score whatever points that row may score you. And so that added twist to how this game scores, increases the tightness of this game, which cards to keep in your hand, which of these similar tree types to put on your board versus what to keep versus what else can I discard. If you know that someone is going for a certain type of tree and you have the really high card in your hand, is it worth discarding to potentially give it to them to score or to add to their tableau? Or do you want to hold on to it so that way they don't score? But it really, it's so tight that you might need that card. You have to discard something. And so you might need to hold on to something and really make some tough decisions. And so this game, for its relative weight and relative, streamlined look to it, it doesn't look like it's much. It's just a card game, but there are a lot of tight decisions and meaningful, tough, even aggressive decisions that you have to make against your opponents in order to play this game well. And that's why I love it so much. And so that's my number 9, Arboretum. My number 8 is Patchwork. This comes in at a rating of, or a weight complexity of 1.6. This is probably Rosenberg's best lightweight game. It is his best lightweight game if you ask Board Game Geek. But for me, it is my second most favorite, and I'll get to the other one later. This one is a quintessential 2-player game about fitting patch tiles onto your board in a style similar to Tetris and hoping to not have a lot of open spaces by the end of the game. And while you're drafting these tiles, you have to draft them with the resource or currency in the form of buttons. You have to have enough of them to purchase these tiles. There is the concept of time too. So every time you purchase a tile, you move forward that many spaces depicted on the tile on the time track. And that, if as soon as one person passes the threshold, that's the end of the game. Doesn't matter how many tiles are left to draft or what's on your board. And so finding that balance between having enough resources, you do generate an income of these resources throughout the game, as well as managing the timing aspect in order to get all the tiles that you can and need to score well in this game, creates a quite competitive game for how relatively easy this game is to learn. I know a lot of people who play more casual games that love Patchwork. And so Patchwork is just a perfect game for gamers and hardcore gamers, lighter gamers, even non-gamers. I've seen this game being played at like WSBG, the World Series of Board Gaming. It was featured, I think, last year or 2 years ago as one of the games that people were competing in. But people can just play this game for fun and still have a great time. And so that is a testament to how interesting this design is, how streamlined it is, yet competitive and strategic this game can be, which is why it is Rosenberg's top rated lightweight game, and it has inspired a lot of his games and other games as well. And so, yeah, Patchwork is definitely one to try. I think it's a little bit lower on my list because it's only a 2-player game, but otherwise, I love Patchwork. My number 8. Number 7 is Skull King. 1.74 is the weight. This game is relatively new to me, and I think it's my favorite trick-taking game. After your hand is drawn, you predict how many tricks you will win, and you place that bid, right? And you play 10 rounds, and each of those rounds, the number of that round tells you how many cards are in your hand. And so you place these bids every time, you bid and say, I'm going to win this many tricks. And in addition to all the numbers, the different suits and number cards that you have other cards like pirates, mermaids, etc., that have their own special effects. You have cards that let you surrender and not win the trick at all. And so it's all about predicting based off of your hand and what others might do with, how many tricks you might win, whether it's 0 or more than that. And so other trick takers probably have reiterated on this game. It's a relatively older game. I think it's about 10 years old now. And so there are probably some other innovative things that you've done with trick taking since then. Oh, there has been, obviously. But to me, the simple rule set has led to some really funny and amazing moments, all with trick taking, which has never been a a mechanism that I've been a fan of. I've not been really my brain doesn't really compute trick taking very well, and so this though created just such a fun atmosphere that I've really been enamored with this game and wanted to play it and try it out some more. It's also on Board Game Arena, and so yeah, if you haven't played this classic trick taker, I highly recommend Skull King, my number 7. Number 6 is Hey, That's My Fish, and that comes in at a weight of 1.45. It helps that this game is abstract and simple enough that I can teach my 5-year-old how to play. Maybe, she's obviously not playing it at the highest strategic level, but it's deep enough to be a strategic game as well, and yet have a simple rule set. You move penguins across a board of tokens that depict different numbers of fish. And what you want to do is have the most fish at the end of the game. You slide your penguin in a straight line, but always pick up the tile that you were previously on, creating holes and limits to the board in which you cannot move your penguins through. And so not only are you trying to target the most profitable tiles for fish, but you're also trying to pigeonhole and limit your opponent from getting to some of those spaces. And so there's kind of a twofold thing in your mind when you're trying to approach it is how am I going to get more fish than my opponent and how am I going to block my opponent? So I guess they're both really interrelated, but it's really cool how that decision, whether to uh, how to block your opponent and how to get more fish, really makes this game feel just really fun. It's probably my favorite abstract right now, beating out even games like Santorini, which have been in my top estimations for lighter games for a long time. So I've really enjoyed Hey, That's My Fish. Number 5 is Applejack. This is a straight 2.0 weight on Board Game Geek, and it is by far not one of Rosenberg's most popular games. I've heard scathing things about Applejack, um, out of Rosenberg's lighter games. But this one holds more of a special part in my collection because it was one of those first games of Rosenberg's on Board Game Arena that I played a lot of and tried to really get good at. It's, I think, perfectly played on a digital format because, as this game is, it's a hex tile placing game. You try to create different groups of apples and draft these tiles and utilize an economy very similar to Patchwork and other Rosenberg games. There's a lot of DNA from Patchwork and other light, tile drafting and tile placement games that Rosenberg had done in between Patchwork and Applejack. However, there is the economy and math involved in, or you're involved in calculating your income every round and at certain parts during the game that it could be quite burdensome and really slow down the game if you're playing it in person. And so having the bookkeeping done online makes this game a far better experience than how it plays on the table, which most people would have played and how they would have reviewed this game. So for me, it's a perfect blend of strategic forward thinking, tactical reactions to drawn tiles, and this game continues to be my favorite Rosenberg lightweight game that I can play solo. I can play it 2-player. I usually play it 2-player, but you can even do 3 or 4 players and still have a good time with it. So I think that's why it pushes Patchwork out a little bit. I do admit that I think Patchwork is a better game, but Applejack is more of my favorite because I've just really enjoyed the experiences that I've had slightly more than my experiences with Patchwork. But that's my number 5, Applejack. Number 4 is Take 5 or Six Nimmt. This game is, I think, my lightest game on this list. It's 1.19. And it's a simple card game that feels like a lot of card games that you've might have seen recently, like Flip 7, or even older games that you would play as kids or teenagers. In fact, I think this game was created back in the 90s. And I think, and it's a game that I currently play with a lot of family members now, which really helps it stay high in my estimations. You simply in this game play a numbered card in ascending order in one of a few rows, 4 rows, right? Uh, but if it's the 5th card that gets placed in a row, and everyone places their card face down and reveals it face up, and you play cards ascending in ascending order. If you play it in the fifth row or the fifth spot in a row, you reset the row and you take the amount of points or subtract the amount of points from, I think you start at 66, and you lose those points. Whoever passes the threshold of 0 triggers the end of the game at the end of the round. Whoever had lost the least amount of points, right? Whoever has the most points remaining wins. And so it's a very chaotic game. The nature of like flipping all of your cards face up and just realizing the people taking a few different rows is just it creates a lot of chaos and hilarity. Very similar to games like Flip 7 that I mentioned before, that I think has been doing this recently with Push Your Luck. Six Nims doesn't really utilize that mechanism, but it's just a classic game of just, let's. You could try to be strategic in this game too, as a matter of fact, like kind of predicting what cards might be the safest to play. There's still a lot that is left to chance, but I really do enjoy playing this game. It's always fun to play in person or even online asynchronously. And so for those reasons, I have it placed at number 4. So that's Take 5 or 6 Nimmt. Number 3 is Castle Combo, which comes in at 1.73. Now, this has been a wonderful hit for me recently. It's a game of buying from a couple of decks of individualized cards, similar to Beer and Bread that I mentioned before. You have these cards that have their costs, so there's a currency in the game. You've got ways to, you're drafting from 2 different rows, and so you've got ways to switch up between those 2 rows in the form of another currency and keys. And so these cards have immediate effects. They have game point awarding effects based off of where they're placed on the tableau, what else is on your tableau, what's next to them as well. And so there is a bit of strategic planning in this game. Yes, there's a lot of chance when it comes to having the right cards be draftable in the market rows by the time it comes around to your turn again. But it's still an excellent game that I feel like plays super quick, as you're only building out a 3x3 tableau. You still have some interesting decisions to make on your turn, even if those choices are quite different from what you were expecting them to be at first. It still scratches an itch for me that I tend to see in heavier games. It's a really light experience and quick, and I've had a lot of success teaching this to gamers who weren't familiar with some of these mechanisms. And so I think it's a great hit. I look forward to playing more with the expansion as well. And that's my number 3, Castle Combo. My number 2 is Harmonies. It's a game with a weight of 2.01. I couldn't really believe that this game's weight was so low. It feels like a heavier game. And on reflection, though, this game is pretty straightforward with how it plays. Once again, I've had a lot of success teaching this game to non-gamers. And what you do in this game is you draft tiles to place onto your tableau, kind of in the style of Azul, where you grab a trio of tokens or tiles and you place them on your tableau, either next to each other. You can even stack some of them as well, which creates a 3-dimensional experience in tableau building. But you also draft cards as well to fulfill objectives and placing your tiles in certain configurations. And there are ways to score based off of the configurations with or without cards for the tableau as well. And so you've got a duality of different objectives to try to chase both on the tableau and with the cards. Obviously very similar to a game like Cascadia. I've mentioned this before. I prefer Harmonies to Cascadia because I feel like it plays quicker. The gameplay feels a little bit not it feels less restrictive, I think, compared to Cascadia. But I've just had a better experience with the way that this game handles the tile drafting and everything compared to Cascadia. So and Cascadia would be here if it wasn't for Harmonies. And so I really do enjoy my number 2 game here, which is Harmonies. And then my number 1, if you're a fan of the channel, it's probably no surprise, it's Age of Civilization. It's a rating of 2.3. Maybe this video is just an excuse to talk about this game again, but I'm okay with that. So this game really teeters that light to medium weight feel in terms of game complexity, but it surprisingly falls into this category. It is a quick worker placement game where you only have like 6 rounds to place workers out, collect money and resources, use that to advance your civilization, whether it's through the building of wonders or advancing up your technology track, and utilizing the different powers that you combine by drafting from a multitude of different civilization cards. And a lot of these civilizations cards are created very thematically. It kind of represents what these ancient civilizations were known for, which I think is really cool. And yeah, the economy of this game is so tight. Like, you only have like 3 to 4 workers, if not less, to mess around with. You only get a certain amount of money. You only have a certain amount of actions that are very limited in this game, and so you have to do a lot with just a little bit of time and and actions. And so this game just is just amazing. I think it's a brilliant design. Age of Galaxy would fit here too, but Age of Civilization is thematically the game that I would rather play, and it is the basis of Epoch's Course of Cultures, which is from the same designer, Jeffrey CCH, that utilizes a lot of the same mechanisms from this game. And so, huge fan of it. It's on Board Game Arena if you want to try it. And yeah, if you're looking for a light game that provides a lot of tough decisions at this complexity level, then Age of Civilization might be a great game to try. So those are my top 10 games that are, I would consider, lightweight in terms of my definitions that I mentioned before. So let me know what you think, if you agree, disagree, and what games you would put on this list that you think I should try. Thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next video. Take care.